My name is Jack Grunstrom. I'm one of the shellfish commissioners in town. I've been a long-time shellfish constable, but I gave it up last year, figuring letting somebody else a little bit younger handle it.
First of all, I'm Nathaniel Dummer, middle initial N. I was named for my grandfather.
I'm Louise Tenny Mahaffey, and I've lived here all my life on the farm.
Paternal grandfather came here from Sweden around the turn of the century, and this was the thing he could do and do best, is dig clams. So that's where we've been ever since. We've always lived here in Rowley and generally quite close to the river. My maternal grandparents and whatnot have been here since day one for Rowley. My mother's family is Carl W. Savage, who started a shucking house and clam dealer on the end of Hammond Street in about 1913, and they're still in business there, and they had 10 children, and all of them worked in the clam business pretty much all their lives. My aunt, who was my mother's sister, and her husband built and operated the clam box in Ipswich for many years, about 30 years. And while I was going through high school, I worked there Friday night, Saturday night, and all day Sunday, and that's how I made my money for going through high school.
My grandfather was the owner of the grain mill that was in Glen Mills, which is on Glen Street. You go up across the turnpike and go down over the hill, and it crossed the bridge, and his mill was there on the right-hand side. And later on, the mill burned, and when he rebuilt as a corporation, as somebody else enjoy the, or rather become part of the business. Then after grandfather rebuilt in Rowley, he then established a mill in Newburyport, which is diagonally across the street from where the Newburyport fire station. Before that, there was my great-grandfather, and he lived on the top of, well, when you come out from Central Street onto the turnpike and head north, he had a house and barn and everything on the top of the next hill.
My ancestors came over, Thomas and Ann Tenney came over with Reverend Ezekiel Rogers in 1638 and founded the town in 1639. My family has lived here on this particular part of the town for many years, several different, generations. So they worked very hard here. And this was a very busy place. There were as many as 9 or 10 people living here that my mom got meals for every day, and they all worked together here, farming and gardening and so forth. We had milking cows here, and a pair of horses, sometimes pigs, lots of poultry, even little baby chicks. So it was a busy time taking care of them every day. You're talking twice a day to milk the cows. And so, yeah, they had gardens. My dad was real proud of his garden. Potatoes, tomatoes, you name it, all the vegetables. And today this is still going on, but it's for a different reason.
I started digging clams when I was 14 years old. If you didn't do something, you couldn't have any fun. There was your fun money you had to earn. In fact, the year between my first grade and second grade, I shucked clams for the summer and earned $18 to buy a new bicycle, and that's how you got things in those days. The year between 8th grade and high school, I worked on a farm down in Essex for $1 a day. And after I'd worked there most of the summer pitching hay, my father said, there's a clam flat that's going to open up downriver on Saturday. You might want to try it. So I went down, I earned $14 the first day and never went back to the farm. When I was growing up, there was only about 1,500 people in Rowley. And I went in the service in 1950 and came out in 1954. And there was probably almost double that, like 3,000. And when I went in the service, I knew every person in Rowley. And when I came out, I probably knew only about half of them. But by working at the town hall and being involved in clams and whatnot, I've got to know most of the people in town, and I hope to know them all at some point in time. But things that most people don't realize is that when I was a kid, we had no indoor plumbing and no central heating. When I bought my house in 1955, when I got out of the service, it had no bathroom, no indoor bathroom, and it had no central heating. And I worked at it now for 60 years until I finally got it quite livable. But I still got a long ways to go. I went to school in Rowley. I started out in school at the History of Rowley school, which became the library. And after 2 years, moved over to the center school, which is now the town hall annex. Then from there, we had our choice to go to Newburyport High School or Ipswich High School. And I went to Newburyport High School 3 years and met my wife. So I changed over to Ipswich High School where she went for my senior year. And then I did a year at Beverly Trade School after that in auto mechanics. And then I went on to night school for college for 12 years for engineering.
I was born in May 24th, 1925, but I can't say that I was born and brought up in Rowley, because my mother was in the hospital in Newburyport, and in those days they kept women for 5 days. And then I got to come to Rowley, and I've been in Rowley ever since. I grew up here. I grew up in the Glen Mills area, across the pike from here. I grew up in the Glen Mills area, went to school from there. There was only, of course, one bus in the morning and one bus at night. And if you missed it, you walked. And it's about 2.5 miles from there down to school. Very seldom did I ever walk. You caught the bus. I can remember one of the days when I was older and I had my bicycle and I was riding my bike to school, and the school bus come, and I can remember trying to race the school bus with disastrous results. Like that wonderful crossbar across, I slipped off the pedals and fell on the crossbar. And I won't go any further.
We had to take the bus every day because it's 5 miles from here to the center. And my grandmother, my mother's mother, Audrey Ricker, she would come and pick us up. She had that little job sublet from the McDonald brothers, who had the bus services. And she'd come and pick us up so I didn't have to walk down the 500-foot lane here in all kinds of weather. And she'd take us out to 133, and then we'd pick up the bus from there every day. I went to the Ezekiel Rogers School. It was pretty new when I went there in the 30s. And then two grades there, and then I went over to the center school and finished, graduated from the town hall and in 1945. And we had our choice of either Newburyport or Ipswich, and I went to Ipswich and spent my 4 years there. And then right out of high school, I got a job. It was waiting for me down at the Danvers National Bank. I wanted to do something like that, so I put my name in early in the spring, And when we graduated in June of '49, when I graduated, they called and wanted me right then. So I worked there 5 years, and I had a busy time. That was 10 miles down and back, and 10 miles home each day, 5 days a week. No banks were open on Saturdays then. And my brother and I were in a lot of plays down there. Being some of the descendants of the people from England and everything, that played a role in our part. And in 1939, by the way, when we had our tercentenary, I was in that parade on a float, and my brother and I, we were just little tots. We unveiled quite a large stone on Leslie Road, where they say there are 100 people buried there, not just from the Tenney family, but of course, that's where they had a burial ground, and it's right near Pulpit Rock there on Leslie Road. So there were a lot of things going on when we were little.
I got married just before. Oh, I got married while I was in the service, as a matter of fact, and from 1950 to 1954. And by the time I got out of the service, I had a child. So I couldn't go on to the GI Bill then because I just couldn't afford to. So by the time I got ready and had time enough to go to college, I had to pay for it all out of my own pocket.
Then when I was grown up and I bought my grandfather's house there in Glen Mills, and we lived there about 5 years, but I went to church at the Byfield Parish Church and went there all my early life until, well, when Millie and I got married in June 4th, 1948. We lived there in Glen Mills for about 4 years or so, and then I wanted to get downtown, where downtown was where all the business of the town goes, where the school is, and I wanted to live in the center of town, so be part of everything going on. Because out there well, as an example of being out of things as far as the town is concerned, I had no idea what trick-or-treat was at Halloween. I just heard of it. We moved down here, and in the fall of '55, Halloween came on, or was celebrated. Kids came on Saturday night, and Sunday night, and Monday night. Sunday was actually the 30th, 31st. But let me tell you, we were scrambling to have stuff to give out at that time. And at that time, they were also collecting pennies for UNICEF.
And then as the children, when I got married and had my family, then later on I worked in Haverhill. And where else did I work? He came here to work for my dad. Bill Mahaffey was a resident of Rowley, and the fellow that was helping the hired help that was here at the time was leaving. So my dad needed somebody. There was too much for him to take care of. You know, milking twice a day and getting the milk transported out of here. Finally they would come and pick up the milk, Prentice from Danvers, FC Prentice. And then this young fellow came to see my dad and said he needed a job on a farm because that November of '42 he was graduating from Essex Aggie and he had to have a job on a farm. And that's how I met my future husband. We were married in 1953, October 3rd. And I was working at the bank, and the bank president, Willis Thorpe, he even came to the wedding. You know, it was a big time. We were married at the Topsfield Congregational Church, an evening wedding, and it was very nice. So we had 51 years together.
I've been digging clams in town all my life. My grandfather before me dug clams, my father dug clams, and my son digs clams, and my grandchildren dig clams. Now, as far as clamming in general goes, the Indians dug clams here for years. In fact, Hog Island Point at the mouth of the river was set aside for the Indians to fish and hunt and dig clams. The Pilgrims, when they first got here, that was the first thing they found was clams and mussels. They were so excited that 14 of them ate enough to get themselves sick. There's been clam digging ever since, and up until the early 1900s, there was enough clams for everybody to go around, and there was no laws, no rules, no regulations about digging them or taking them. Then people saw they were getting popular along the coast, and they started putting in rules and regulations, so that today a commercial clam digger can dig 180 pounds a day, and a non-commercial clam digger can dig 40 quarts a week for his own personal use. The clamming over the years has been up and down. Some years it's been great, other years it's been practically nothing. Right now, because we've done a lot of propagation in town, clamming is pretty good.
Yeah, I do remember the what was it, 350th, which came in 1989. Yeah, I'd been retired for 2 years from GE and was involved in the things going on. The thing I remember most was the day that we had the big picture of everybody, and we were on the common, and it was hot. And I can remember, here I am in costume, and I was carrying an umbrella to keep the sun off me because it was so blooming hot. And it took a long time to get everybody in position for that picture. And then we had some guy that was fast, because the picture was a panorama and the camera was panning all around like this. And we had some guy that was fleet of foot that was on one end and had his picture taken, and by the time the camera got to the other end, he was standing there too. So there's two of him. Well, yes, there was one before that. It was Arnold's, it was a recreation of Arnold's expedition to Canada, I believe. And he came through town and they camped out here, and then they went up the old post road, which was Central Street, and went up across, and the post road at that time went past Glen Mills and went straight up the lane where I lived up in there, and then went up over the hill, which is Governor Dummer land on the top, and came down the other side and went down across and out over Thurlow's Bridge, which in the early days was a ferry, and there are milestones all the way along, and it comes out in Newbury, down the center of Newbury, as far as I don't know as it goes in, where it goes from there.